thanks for watching. Today's video is going to be a drugstore makeup tutorial. This one in particular is a very fresh, glowy, girly look. I think a look like this is perfect for days when you maybe didn't get so much sleep, or you're just feeling kind of drained, sick, or not your best. I got about 3 hours of sleep last night, so I woke up feeling like roadkill that had been run over by a manure truck. Yeah, was not feeling so hot. This is a great look to do if you want to trick people into thinking that you got your full 8 hours of sleep. If you wanted to make this look a little bit more fall or winter themed, you could switch out the lip for more of a berry or mauve. And I'm also very excited to announce that I will be doing a giveaway coming up very soon on my channel here, featuring some of my favorite drugstore products. If you want to stay up to date with the giveaways I plan on doing, definitely check out my Facebook page and my Instagram, which I will link below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you next time. To prime my eyelids, I'm going to be using the Maybelline Master Conceal Camouflaging Concealer, while still helping to smooth out the appearance of the skin. Even though it's not technically an eyelid primer, I'm going to be using it as a base to help prolong the wear of my eyeshadow, but also to help camouflage the discoloration and darkness around my eyes. So you can use your fingers to apply this. I'm just going to be using a fluffy blending brush, just buffing this into the eyelids. You really don't want to take a lot of product when you're doing this, because the more you take, the more likely it is to move and crease. And then using my fingers, I'm going to be patting the product into the skin. So you can see that already made a huge difference in brightening the eyes. To set that, I'm going to just be using some pressed powder. This is the Maybelline Fit Me. And I'm just going in with that same brush, just dusting the powder over top. If you are using a concealer as your base, it's very important to set it with powder, just to prevent it from creasing or moving, but also to make sure the shadow you put on over top will be able to glide on and blend much nicer. To begin the eyes, I'm going to be using a fluffy crease brush, a neutral brown tone into my crease. For most of my shading on my eyes, I'm actually going to be using primarily the NYX contour kit. Even though this is a face contour kit, the shades and textures are beautiful for eyeshadows. So I'm going to be using this shade here. I'm just going to begin by blending this just above my crease and below my brow bone. You don't have to use a contour kit for this. You can use any eyeshadow that is that matte kind of neutral soft brown. Next, I'm going to be taking an eyeshadow blending brush. This particular one is from Still Spot Essentials, which, like I said, you can get at Walmart. So I'm just going to be going in with the darkest shade of the contour palette, just taking a very small amount on my brush. And then this is going to be going on the outermost part of my eye. Like I said, just creating more of a rounded eye shape. Then I'm going back in with the blending brush I was using before, just to soften the edges and make sure it's all nice and diffused. Now I'm going to be taking a cream eyeshadow stick to use as a base to make the powder shadow I'm going to put on look a little bit more vibrant and also help it to last longer. Concentrating it on the innermost part, just using very light strokes, and then we're going to be blending it out with our finger. And then taking your finger, just lightly press and smooth it out. It's okay if it's not perfect, because we are going to go over top with an eyeshadow. Next, I'm going in with one of my favorite drugstore eyeshadows of all time, and I'm going to be applying this with my finger because I really want it to be pigmented. You can use a brush. If you use a brush, I highly recommend using something flat rather than something fluffy, because a fluffy brush just will not pick up this pigment. And then I just take a tiny bit of that soft brown that we used from that contour palette and just work a teeny bit more into the crease. Going in with a tiny bit of that warmer brown, I'm just going to be applying this as my transition shade, just to kind of bring it all together. For eyeliner, I find it's much easier if I'm doing a winged or liquid eyeliner to first draw the rough shape with a pencil and then trace over top of the liquid. So I'm going to be using the NYX waterproof eyeliner in the shade Jet Black, and I'm just going to be pressing this as close to my lash line as I can get, and then doing a tiny little baby wing. Then going in with an angled brush, I'm just going to be softening this line and then just dragging out the wing a tiny bit. Again, if it's not perfect, that's okay. This is just the rough outline. So one of my favorite liquid liners is the NYC eyeliner. Very popular. Pretty much everyone, I feel, owns this eyeliner. This one can be a little tricky to work with, so I really find if you're using this one, it helps to have that line underneath already. Does anyone else hold their breath while they're doing liquid eyeliner? Like, it can smell your fear. So I personally lately have been liking to extend my eyeliner a little bit more in that inner corner. I just like how much bigger it makes my eyes look. just makes it a little more dramatic. For a little bit of a brow bone highlight, I'm going to be using the Frosted shade from that NYX contour palette. It's just a really beautiful highlight, and it looks really beautiful on the brow bone and on the inner corner. Moving on to the face, I'm not actually going to be using a face primer just because lately I've been preferring my makeup without a primer because I am very textured and prone to dry patches. So because I want more of a luminous effect to my skin since I am so tired, I'm going to be using the True Match Lumi, but for a little bit extra coverage, I'm also going to be mixing that with the regular True Match. Now, you do not have to do this. You can definitely stick to just one foundation if you prefer. But I own both and I like both for different reasons. Regular True Match is very blendable and it offers great coverage, but personally it's a little too dry for my skin, whereas the True Match Lumi gives a very beautiful radiant finish, but it's not quite enough coverage for what I would like in certain areas. So I use like 2 parts Lumi to 1 part regular True Match. So I will pour a little bit of each on the back of my hand, mix them together, and then apply them to my skin. For applying foundation, lately I've really been liking to apply it to my face first with some sort of a stippling brush and then blending it out with a sponge. But a much cheaper alternative would be the e.l.f. small stippling brush. It's not my favorite brush, but I mean for a less expensive alternative, it definitely does the job. So I like to take a small amount of this and start working it into the skin. Applying first with a brush gives you a little bit more control and helps you apply a lighter amount. And then I'm going to go in with my Real Technique sponge. This is only like $7 and I like it 1,000 times better than the Beauty Blender. And I actually like to use the flat side to really just push the product into my skin. So that covered most of what I wanted to. If you have any spots or like redness peeking through, I will just take a little bit of that same Maybelline Master Conceal concealer I used on my eyelids and just pop it on any spots that might need it. So for me, that is some red marks in this area here that are left over from acne scarring. So I like to push it on with my finger, let it sit for a few seconds, and then go back and blend it out. For the most natural look, I like to tap the concealer into the skin with my finger. For the under eyes, I'm going to be using the NYX Dark Circle Concealer. It comes in a little jar just like this, and it is very creamy, very emollient, and a little bit more peachy salmon tone. And I like to use the shade number 3, which is very salmon tone, as you can see. But I really just find it helps counteract the darkness and create a better base. I don't use this on its own as concealer, I use this more as a corrector. And then I'm going to go in with the very popular and well-loved Maybelline Instant Age Rewind Concealer. Pretty much everyone knows about this concealer, but I definitely think it is still one of the best concealers on the market. And a trick that I actually learned at the matte class that I attended in November is to let your concealer dry for just a few seconds so it becomes a bit more tacky. When you blend away your concealer when it's too wet, what happens is you end up blending away a lot of the coverage. So then you feel like, oh, I kind of have to go back in and redo it. And then I like to tap it in with my finger, warm it into the skin, and then start gently blending it in with the sponge. I also like to pop a little bit of that around my nose, around my mouth, and a tiny bit on my forehead. To set, I'm going to be using a combination mainly of these 2 shades here. And this is the Real Techniques, I believe it was the Bold Metallic collection. My under eyes are very dehydrated to begin with, so I have to be very careful with powder. I take the tiniest little bit on the brush and just lightly press it in. For bronzer, I'm going to use a little bit of the Rimmel Shimmering Maxi Bronzer. Even though this is a blush brush, I actually prefer to apply a light dusting of bronzer or powder. Just want to take a little bit on your brush, and I'm going to lightly work this into my temples. This brush is so soft. To apply that bronzer, I'm going to be using the blush brush from that Still Spa Essentials kit that I talked about before. To contour, I'm going to be using the Real Techniques Expert Face Brush. I'm also going to do a little bit of contouring on my nose, just because my nose is still swollen from my surgery and so I'm just going to be using a little eyeshadow domed pencil brush. This doesn't have a name. I don't actually remember where I got this. And I'm just going to apply the contour mostly to the tip. For highlight, I'm going to be using that Frosty shade from the NYX contour kit. And this is a brush, I believe this was from BH Cosmetics. It doesn't actually have a name on it. It is pretty old. I'm just going to apply this to the high points of my cheekbones. I'm just going to put a little bit on the tip of my nose. Ooh, okay. For blush, I'm actually going to be mixing two Milani blushes. The first one I'm going to use is the Tea Rose powder blush, and my favorite blush brush is the Real Techniques. I think it's called the blush brush. This is very well loved. Writing has actually worn off, and I'm going to apply a little bit of this to the apples of my cheeks. For an extra little bit of glow, I'm going to be taking the Baked powder blush, which looks like this, and I'm actually going to be using this as a little bit of a blush booster just because it's very shimmery. I don't always like to wear these on its own because my cheeks are already so textured. I don't want to accentuate it. Now that my face is pretty much done, I'm going to go ahead and finish my eyes. So this is just a Revlon lash curler. So the mascara that I'm going to be using is the Maybelline Volume Express Pumped Up Colossal. It's a huge wand. Like, it's very fluffy. So if you do have smaller or deep set eyes, it can be a little messy. I definitely suggest taking your time with it and really going slow. So for this, I like to hold it at the root and really just slowly wiggle it upwards. If you were wanting to apply false eyelashes, I would say just do one small coat of mascara. I'm not really going to bother with false lashes today just because I want to show you don't always need false eyelashes to have a good eye makeup look. Don't get me wrong, I love falsies and they will definitely kick your look up a notch, but let's be real, like, who has time or patience to do that every day? Because I don't. While that is drying, to really help make my eyes look bigger and brighter, I'm going to be using a waterline highlight. This is the NYX Wonder Pencil. So I'm just going to pop this right in my waterline. To finish off that lower lash line, I'm just going to go in with that dark brown from the NYX contour palette on an angled brush. I'm not going to be bringing this all the way in towards the inner corner of my eye, but rather just blending it below the outer half. And then I'm going to take a little bit of mascara on my lower lash line. The lips, I'm going to be using the NYX Retractable Lip Liner in the shade 01 Nude. And then over top of that, I'm going to be using the Revlon Color Burst Matte Balm, and this is in the shade 205 Elusive. So because that is quite a bright pink, I'm going to tone it down a little bit with a pale lip gloss. This is the NYX Butter Gloss in the shade Eclair. These glosses are my favorite things of life. So the final touch for me, as always, is a setting spray, especially since I don't really like to go in with a primer beforehand. So I'm going to be using the NYX Dewy Finish Setting Spray. And that is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this look. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.